Now we're rolling.
All right, am I bigger?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bigger, longer, uncut.
That's me, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's me. That's why they call me Girth.
Girth.
All right.
On that note.
Hello, dig for bones.
I don't think anyone knows that I'm the one cut off your toes and put them in the drawer with the sock.
Hello, and welcome to the Least Haunted Podcast, a place where science, skepticism, humor, and anthropology meet to discuss all things spooky, haunting, supernatural, and sometimes just the plain ridiculous. I'm your host, Cody Franks, and joining me as almost always is... flitting frantically and filled with fun, frenetically flying fanciful fractions from in front to following, friendly and fascinated for facts and facetious flippancy.
Garth. Hi, everyone. This is me, Garth, your co-host of the Least Haunted Podcast.
That moniker, again, came from Discord. Can you guess who came from?
Was that Kenan?
It was Kenan.
No, it's Kenan, not Kenan. That's
Kenan.
a different guy. Thank you, Kenan.
If you want to get in on the action and supply a moniker for Garth, as well as join in with all the other shenanigans that we get up to in our little space on Discord, then join the Discord. There's a link in the show description.
It's nice. It's like social media back in 2010 when everything was cool.
I'd say it's even older than that.
Maybe 2000. It's like MySpace. Anyway, and also you can go to patreon.com if you want to patronize us. We have tiers and things like that.
We like to be patronized.
Not like crying tears, like shelves. Levels. So what are we talking about today, Cody Franks?
Today's topic, Garth, what we're talking about is the Cottingley Fairies. Do you know about
Yes.
Cottingley
This is one of
fairies?
those situations where I actually do know of this. I am not in the dark. So I won't give anything away by telling you all the stuff I know about him. But yes, I'm aware of this time in the past where fairies were actually caught on film.
Yeah, that's
real evidence.
That's what we're going to talk about. And
Okay.
to do so, we're going to take a ride on the backwards carousel of time.
Oh boy! All right, we haven't used this in a while. It's been sitting right here in the corner of the room. I guess I better dust it off. And yeah, it looks like it's charged. It runs on solar now. No, luckily it's in the side of the room with all the windows, so it's fully ready.
And I think we've talked about this before, but you and I.
Yeah.
But, just that the audience, I think I'd like to see what everybody's mental picture of the carousel is. Like, how do they picture
Yeah,
this
I kind
thing?
of don't want to describe it too much because you all have your idea, and if we define it now, we're just going to be contradicting your imaginations.
As Kierkegaard said, if we define it, we will negate it.
Is that what he said?
Well, paraphrasing, is it Kierkegaard?
I don't know.
Or was it Sartre? Or was it Dick Van Patten who
Sartre.
said, if you define me, you negate me? Anyway, there is actually an official picture of it.
That's true.
The Monster Squadron has...
Yeah, I did an illustration of Cody and I with the backwards carousel for all of you supporters of us. And yeah, if you want to see what we think it looks like, you can join us. Go to Patreon.
It was a limited run of prints. There were only, I think, 23, and they're available for the Monster Squadron.
Yeah,
and our
we still
Monster
have
Squadron's at 18.
We still
so
have
there's
some left,
still some left.
somewhere here in the headquarters, although I'm not sure exactly where.
You get an autographed limited edition print. Anyway,
All right, I'm on the carousel. Are you on the carousel?
I'm on the carousel now.
I'm gonna get on a bunny.
Do we have a bunny on this?
Yeah,
thing?
there's a bunny.
Did we ever talk about it? Oh, I guess it's the White Rabbit from Monty Python.
There are monsters on here that have yet to be episodes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me just put in the data here that we need, and flip this big switch here. Oh wait! I forgot. I got to put a quarter in.
You're one of those people that says the sound effects when you actually do the thing, aren't you?
It makes it so I know what to add, Garth.
You would.
I'll replace the me saying ka-chunk. That will be replaced.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna do both. I'm like, oh my
no,
gosh.
this is merely for your benefit.
I appreciate that. No, I can imagine the sounds. Anyway, here we are. We're going. Whoa!
Whoa!
Oh, Cody, where are we?
Welcome to England, July 1917. Right this very moment, the war to end all wars is raging on the continent. Somewhere on one of those battlefields, a young Jonathan Ronald Raoul Tolkien is forming the earliest stories that would someday become the greatest work of 20th century fantasy. Come at me, Narnia. Yet here, in the quiet village of Cottingley, in West Yorkshire, another fantasy is about to be born. If you listen carefully, Garth, you can hear the dulcet sounds of a small suburban English village. The troubles of war might as well be thousands of miles away. That's right, I said miles, not kilometers.
Oh.
England uses the international mile for long distance, but metric for anything else, apparently.
Oh, no.
You can Google it.
Oh, no.
They've made it more complicated.
Yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah, their road signs are all in miles, and their speed is in miles per hour, but everything else is meters and centimeters and metric.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, and can you hear that, Garth?
What's that? Oh, I
sound-
do. I hear something.
The sound of gently running water?
Yeah.
That's the Cottingley beck. Can you hear the beck, Garth?
I do. I do hear the beck.
Hold on. That carousel malfunction. Let me fix that.
Oh, that was a cool beck for a second.
Sorry, this thing gets buggy when we don't use it for a long time or do the regular updates. Anyway, a beck is a colloquial term for a stream. What my grandmother would have insisted on pronouncing as a crick.
A
in her
crick.
t-
Oh yeah.
Now can you hear it?
I can. I preferred I preferred it before, but I can hear it now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
It's bubbling.
let's take a walk down to the beck and have a look around.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you look over there, you'll see the two main characters of our story. Those two girls over there laughing
yeah.
with the camera.
Yeah.
The smaller one is 9-year-old Frances Griffiths, and the taller one is her 15-year-old cousin, Elsie Wright. Man, how many of these... Something's weird, man. Every time we take a trip on this thing lately, we end up spying on underage kids from the bushes.
I mean, I guess that's where all stories start. As long as they don't see us, it's not weird, right, Cody? Isn't that how that works?
I am not willing to
Let's
confirm
move on.
that. Yeah,
So
on.
now what's going to happen?
Anyway, sorry. Those two girls, they live just there at the top of the hill. Frances and her mother have only recently relocated from South Africa. Coincidentally, that's where J.R.R. Tolkien was born.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the two cousins spend much of their time playing by the beck.
Boy, they are getting muddy, aren't they?
Yeah, Frances, coming from the excitement of South Africa, is understandably a bit restless in this new bucolic environment. And Elsie is a teenage girl in England at a time when most of the teen boys were headed off to war.
Oh, yeah.
Also, her best friend is her 9-year-old cousin. So, the two of them get into what their parents consider to be a bit of trouble down at the beck, since they often return with wet and muddy clothes. You know, regular kid stuff at the creek.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day, after a particularly stern scolding for the state of their clothes, Frances defended herself and Elsie by saying, "We were just playing with the fairies." Here, there she goes. We're just playing with the fairies.
Oh, I wonder if that's going to work.
Elsie's father, Arthur, being a man of stiff British unflappability, said something akin to "Pixort didn't happen." Although in the parlance of the time and on my limited stereotypical knowledge of the language, I bet he said something more like, "I'm boiling a pudding. If you have any proof, then you had better add it to the pan. Pip, pip, cheerio."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Now, Elsie's father also happened to be a photography enthusiast with his own darkroom and cameras. Keep in mind, this is 1917.
Oh, okay.
So it's,
Wow.
probably an expensive hobby.
Sure, yeah.
Elsie also had some familiarity with the camera since she had taken an interest in her father's hobby. So he agreed to let her borrow his Midge camera, which used glass plates.
Okay, it's a glass plate camera.
Yeah, so that they could go get proof of said fairies.
All right.
The two girls took the camera down to the beck and returned within an hour with plates ready to develop, and they were eager to have it develop right away. They told Arthur, hey, do it now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The first image is now famous. It shows the young Frances looking off slightly to her left, as right in front and below her face, a group of small winged women in flowing clothing seem to be dancing.
This is the one I'm familiar with, yes.
Yeah.
This is the classic photo of a fairy.
Arthur, being, like I said, unflappable, immediately smells bullshit. He suspected that these, quote, fairies were merely cut-out drawings made by his artistically talented daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't 100% certain as to how the girls had pulled off the staging. Either way, he just sort of let it go.
Okay.
Then in September, 2 months later, a new photograph. This time, Elsie is seen sitting on a patch of grass while a small winged imp-like or gnome-like figure, complete with conical cap, that if he were an alp would make him invisible. Is taking her hand. Again, Arthur was like, what's all this then? But
I was waiting for you to say that one.
But again, he just wrote it off as the girls being cheeky. However, he did tell them that from now on, they're not allowed to use his camera anymore.
Oh.
He was worried that somehow, whatever it was they were doing with it, was tampering with it, and it would probably break his expensive camera. And that's where the story sits for more than a year.
Wow, that was an interesting episode of The Least Haunted, huh?
It's not done yet!
Oh, what? Did anyone else see these photos?
We're going to jump ahead. Blah, 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 fast forward. Okay.
Oh, wow. What time are we in now, Cody?
Now it is the latter half of 1918. So the pictures were taken in 1917.
Oh, the Great War is over. The war to end all wars is over. Peace on earth. Thank
there will
goodness.
never be another war again.
No, that's why they call it the war to end all wars. Oh, wow.
Anyway, Elsie's mother, Polly, she is a theosophist, or she's a member of the theosophist movement.
Oh, yes.
And we've talked about theosophy before. It's not
Theosophy?
Theosophy? Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not theosophism. Apparently, it is theosophy,
Okay.
and they are the theosophists.
Okay.
They don't like being called a religion, but it's like a religion. It's kind of a
okay.
cult.
But they're like, they think they're scientific.
Yeah, so it was a movement that was began by Madame Blavatsky in the late 1800s.
Yes.
She was a foil to Harry Price. He tangled with them and took her on and exposed a bunch of her stuff as fraud.
I remember us discussing her in a previous episode, yes.
Yeah, I think it was in the Battle of Borley.
Oh, that's an old one.
Yeah, going way back, like 100 episodes ago.
Wow.
So the Theosophists believed that there was a supernatural awakening that was going to occur, and that there was hidden secret ancient knowledge that had been held by these, quote, secret masters that was the key to unlocking this new age for humanity. Literally a new age movement.
This is where it started. The New Age movement.
And remember the secret masters either in Tibet or in various mountains around the world. Mount Shasta. We talked about that too. Anyway, Elsie's mother, Polly, she's a member and a follower of the movement. So when the local chapter of the Theosophist Society announced that they were going to hold a talk on fairy life near the end of 1918, she, of course, goes and brings the glass plates of those two pictures with her to the meeting.
Uh-huh.
The leader of the talk was enthused when after she came up and showed him these glass plates, and they were then taken to the Theosophist Society's annual conference in Harrogate.
Okay, so now they have the plates, and they're showing them off.
Yes.
Okay, the ball is rolling now.
Yeah, they go to the national conference of the Theosophist Society. The head of the Theosophist Society at the time was this guy named Edward Gardner. And he sees the pictures and he loves them because they are proof of everything that the Theosophist Society has been preaching. Quote, "The fact that two young girls had not only been able to see fairies, which others had done, but had actually for the first time ever been able to materialize them at a density sufficient for their images to be recorded on a photographic plate, meant that it was possible that the next cycle of evolution was underway."
It's interesting that they need to be dense enough to be photographed, is his thinking.
Yeah, it's like they need the belief.
Yeah, or fairies could have been photographed before, but they just weren't dense enough.
Yeah, there's a psychical component to this too.
Okay.
So the Theosophists believe that there is in addition to our own world, just beyond like a thin membrane, there is this like magical world.
Beyond some kind of a veil, one might say.
Yes, through some kind of veil, exactly.
Yes.
This world that in the past was oftentimes referred to as fairy is the realm. F-A-E.
Oh, I've seen
R-I-E.
fairy spelled a different way. Is that what
That's
that
like
is?
the Shakespearean way, you know,
Right,
like
right.
is it Oberon into Tanya?
With a whole lot of vowels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is this other secret world that the ancient masters, it's not exactly as like they described it in the past, but it's what the ancient masters have access to, this ancient knowledge that our ancestors used to also accomplish like feats of advanced engineering, etc., pyramid building, what have you.
The fairies.
Yeah.
Or the fairy realm.
Or that realm, that magical world. So he sees these plates. He says, obviously, the veil is getting thinner. They are coming through. The new age.
Here comes
is at
the
hand.
age of Aquarius.
Yes.
Don't tell us when the new age gets old enough to drink. I'm going to drop as many Beck references as I can think of in this episode.
So, Gardner, though, he acquires these plates and he sends them off to a photography expert for analysis. The conclusion from the expert was, quote, "The two negatives are entirely genuine, unfaked photographs with no trace whatsoever of studio work involving card or paper models."
Okay, wait. So he's saying it's in camera.
Yes. He says whatever is on that plate was before the
no
camera.
one did post editing
Yeah.
on the plate, but he's also suggesting that it wasn't drawn or on cards in camera. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, but he hesitates to say that it is actually proof of fairies. So I guess what he's trying to say is that whatever technique they used, it wasn't like double exposure, like the ghost photographs that we had talked about before.
Okay, so that's what he means.
They
That's
weren't
what
like
he's ruling
prepared
out.
plates. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, no, whatever was there was really there. That whole thing about them not being cutouts, though, I feel like that's something that was added by Gardner, because as we're going to find out, he ignores certain pieces of evidence himself to push his narrative. Gardner then had that expert lighten the exposure on the pictures so they could make prints, mass-produced prints, and disseminate them to other branches of the Theosophist Society, as well as make prints that he could sell at lectures.
I've seen a lot of versions of this photo with varying degrees of quality.
Yeah.
And like it took some digging to find like the best original. And then comparing that to a lot of these other ones, I wonder if those were just copies of copies. It sounds like they probably made copies of copies and they degraded each time.
I think the originals still exist, and they were auctioned off by Sotheby's.
Oh, it'd be interesting
for
to see
a lot
the
of money.
original.
A
Yeah.
lot of money.
Well, it's part of history.
Meanwhile, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was asked by the Strand magazine to write an article on the subject of fairies in general for their 1920 Christmas issue. So time is like past now. We're into like, we're into mid like 1920 at this point.
Oh, okay.
Now, the Strand magazine, they would do holiday specials. Imagine that, right? Where everything is
I don't know. It sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. So they get Arthur Conan Doyle like, hey, we want you to write this like whimsical article about fairies for us. And so he starts doing his research, because it takes time to prepare such a thing. Mm-hmm. And through his connections and research, he becomes aware of the two Cottingley Beck fairy pictures, because he's also a follower and a member of the Theosophist Society himself. Through that connection, he's actually able to connect with Elsie and Francis to get their story. Well, actually, he gets a hold of their dad, Arthur. Remember, he's the one who said it was all bullshit originally?
Yeah, harumph, he said, I think, several
What's
times.
all this then?
Yes.
Rubble. So,
Big mustache.
yes, Arthur Conan Doyle gets a hold of Arthur and wants permission
Hello, Arthur. My name's Arthur. What? Arthur? Arthur Conan Doyle? What?
What? So he asks permission to reprint the photographs, which seems like the first time anyone has actually asked permission, but also it's kind of interesting that he's not asking the girls who took the picture. And by our modern legal definitions, they'd be the copyright holder.
I believe by definitions of the time, the children are owned by the father, and anything they produce is the father's, probably.
I guess so.
Yeah. I don't think they're asking the girls anything.
But he's like starstruck that it's Arthur Conan Doyle.
Sure,
'cause
yeah.
He's a celebrity
Can
by
you
this point.
imagine?
Yeah. Stephen King
Yeah, I was about
contacts
to say,
us.
if Stephen King called us and was like, "Hey,
like,
can I
"Garth."
can I use one of your episode arts for the cover of my new book?"
I'm like, what?
Sure, Mr. Stephen King.
So because he's so starstruck, though, he declines any financial compensation. Again, I think his daughters probably would have appreciated some kind of money for what they've made. But, early 20th century England and the rights of young girls, etc. Surely things have gotten better by now, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, moving on.
Uh-huh.
So, there's more analysis that's done of these pictures. This time this is when Arthur Conan Doyle gets involved. He's like, well, I want a second opinion. So he arranges to have the plates sent to Kodak.
Oh, okay. Kodak was around. That's so funny hearing more modern things. Although, is Kodak still around? Is that gone now?
No, Kodak, I think, still exists.
Okay. But, like, the fact that Kodak was around in the 20s, like, oh, we'll take it to Kodak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kodak looks at them, and they decline to issue a certificate of authenticity because, as an international company, they don't want to weigh in and say, like, yeah, fairies are real.
This is back before companies felt the need to have a press release where they took a side on every single darn issue on the planet.
But they did also side with that first analysis. Like, well, we don't really see, like, that the camera's been tampered with or it's fake, whatever's on.
They went as far as to say that. Okay.
Yeah, but we're not going to say that it's fairies. And then they have one other camera company, Ilford. They look at it, and Ilford looks at it and goes, unequivocally, this is a fake. There are signs of fakery. This is not real. But Gardner and Arthur Conan Doyle, they're like, well, you know what? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We're just going to ignore that third one where somebody said it was fake.
There you go.
There was also a physicist who looked at it, Sir Oliver Lodge, and he was like, yeah, this is fake on the grounds that, like, isn't it weird that these fairies have, like, modern haircuts? They keep up with current fashion trends? That's interesting.
He's using his physics expertise to point that out.
Well, he also is a physicist who's like, yeah, the world of fairy is just not physically possible.
Those wings would need to be way bigger.
Yeah.
Mm.
They're too diaphanous. So, as this is all going on, it's the summer of 1920. Arthur Conan Doyle is doing his research. He, unfortunately, cannot go to Cottingley himself because he's got a speaking engagement in Australia. He has to go
wow.
to.
Okay.
And now I guess because the war's over, he can go do that. So he sends Gardner to be his emissary, who then goes to get the story from the girls and gifts each of those girls their own camera.
Nice. Oh, that's
to
cool.
keep.
Right on.
He gives each of them a quarter-plate Cameo camera manufactured by W. Butcher and Sons in London. So it's top-of-the-line stuff.
Nice.
And then say, okay, now I want to see some fairies.
I was thinking, like, he gave it to them, but the implication is now please take more pictures of fairies.
Yeah.
Been a few years, though.
Yeah, it has been. And so the girls, they're a little older, a little wiser, you know. Frances is 12, Elsie is 17, going on 18. And they're like, we can't because it's the summertime. It's too hot for fairies.
Oh, yeah. Didn't you know that, Conan Doyle?
But it's Gardner that's there.
Oh, Gardner?
On behalf of Doyle.
Sherlock
Which is kind of
Holmes
interesting
would know
because
that.
the original pictures were taken in July, and this is also July. So, but I guess when the original pictures were taken, it was a little overcast and a little cooler.
Okay.
But at the time of the original pictures, or actually a year later in 1918, Frances had sent a letter home to one of her friends back home in South Africa, where she talks about seeing these fairies and says, "Isn't it interesting? We never saw fairies in South Africa. I think it was too hot for them."
There you
so
go.
they've already got this like worked in. You know, they're being consistent with their
It's
their
good.
world.
It's good.
building.
Yeah.
Then there were a few days where the weather changed, and they're like, "Well, can we go see the fairies now?" And then the girl's like, "Well, we would, but the fairies only trust us. They don't trust this adult man. Even our own family can't go. Like, our moms can't even see the fairies. They only trust us."
No witnesses.
Yes. So he's like, okay, fine. I'll leave. And then they also get the girls' mothers to agree that, okay, we'll leave and go to the shops for a few hours so nobody can see you talk to the fairies. And wouldn't you know it, when they do that, the girls get results.
Nice.
They take 3 more photographs. These pictures are also, these end up getting published by Arthur Conan Doyle in his article that winter. And that's when it becomes an international thing. In his article, when he finally writes it, he gives the girls pseudonyms. He calls one Alice.
Oh,
and that might be because he's doing some kind of allusion to Alice through the looking glass.
I was
hanging out with
thinking that
fairies.
because, the picture I saw, the best quality one I found of the original girl with the fairies dancing around said Alice with the fairies. So that must have been from that. Okay.
And this might also, this has just popped into my head right now. Did you know Walt Disney started off doing things called the Alice Adventures?
I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
this.
they were animations that he did where he filmed a real little girl and then animated around her character.
I've seen one of those. I didn't know
Yes.
that's what they were called, but I know what you're talking
she
about.
is Alice. Like
Yeah,
Alice
it's
the
like
Looking Glass.
early Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
And so
Yeah.
it might be that is also Arthur Conan Doyle. Like they've maybe, I don't know if when the Alice shorts were done. Sorry. I know I'm
20s probably, maybe early 30s.
and this is 1920.
Yeah, I don't think they would have been done before the 20s.
Yeah, 1923. Okay. I was just thinking because she kind of looked like the girl. It might have been some kind of...
1923, that's earlier than I would have expected for the Alice shorts. Okay,
well, anyway, never mind. Disregard that. Redacted. Don't matter.
Yeah.
But now you, the listener, you now know that Disney was doing integrations of live action and cartoons in 1923.
There you go.
Anyway, he calls the girl Alice and the other one is Iris instead of Elsie. To hide their identities. But the people who knew them personally saw these pictures like, hey, that's you. I know you. And so they were getting teased at school. Also,
really?
Arthur Conan Doyle mocked internationally. Like, he takes a lot of heat for this because people are like, this is obviously not real.
These are obviously cutouts that are drawn.
Yeah.
I mean, they're good, but...
So the other three photographs they are a picture of a fairy that is standing on a branch and handing off a blossom to Elsie, and she's taking that. And I think that one he calls like Iris gets a flower. And then the other one is a fairy leaping out of a bush at like Francis's face as if attacking her. It's not really. It's just like, hey, and she's like, oh.
Wouldn't that be a great turn if they if they had done a series of like the fairies attacking them?
Yeah, you told people about us. You need to die.
Yeah.
But that one's called Francis and the Leaping Fairy. Or I think in that case, Alice and the Leaping Fairy. And then the last one is what they call a bower, a fairy bower. Now, a bower is like a type of nest that birds build, usually on the ground. There's actually a bird called a bower bird that builds these things where they fold grass over. So it's like a little twisted mass of grass with these three fairies. But the fairies in this one, they almost appear like double exposures. Like they're almost transparent.
Oh,
so it's kind of hard to see them. Like they're overexposed. And so
maybe the idea is that they're glowing or the girl's just...
Either way.
Yeah, I don't know.
The article gets published, and like I said, everybody's like, that is some bullshit, Arthur Conan Doyle. Anyway.
The writer of Sherlock Holmes should know better.
Yeah, so he ends the article ends with these words. The recognition of the existence will jolt the material 20th century mind out of its heavy ruts in the mud, and will make it admit that there is a glamour and mystery to life. Having discovered this, the world will not find it so difficult to accept that spiritual message supported by physical facts, which have already been put before it.
I guess our minds are in the mud, and...
So... There was a guy, Major John Hall Edwards. He was a critic of this. He was like one of the first people to do X-rays in Britain, and he said, "On the evidence, I have no hesitation in saying that these photographs could have been faked. I criticize the attitude of those who declared there is something supernatural in the circumstances attending to the taking of these pictures because, as a medical man, I believe that the inclusion of such absurd ideas into the midst of children will result in later life in manifestations of nervous disorder and mental disturbances." Basically, it's a moral panic. He's like, if you encourage these kids to believe in fairies, they're going to grow up to be psychopaths. So anyway, eventually though, like, interest in this kind of wanes. You know, there's another war to end all wars that comes along.
Other stuff goes on. Life moves on.
Yeah, life moves on. But that's not the end of the story because, you know, we still got a little bit more to explore and say, like, well, what really was all this then?
Yes.
But before that, we need to take a break to go dig for some bones.
Oh my gosh, let's do it. We're digging for bones.
Do you like beer?
Of course you do.
Do you like good food?
You better believe it.
Then we have the show for you.
It's the Hoppy Trails Podcast.
I'm Nick.
I'm Travis, and on each episode of Hoppy Trails, we invite you to come along on our journey to explore craft beverages and the foods that accompany them.
check out Hoppy Trails on hoppytrailspod.com or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us on Instagram at hoppytrailspod or reach out to hoppytrailspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Come travel the hoppy trails with us, and remember to always say yes to the hoppy ending.
Cheers!
What was that laugh? I asked myself. I'm trying to recreate that as much as possible. I don't think I've ever laughed like that in my life. That was new. What is that? This is my new laugh for 2024. New Year, new laugh. We have a spanking new podcast for your ear holes called Doom Generation.
Available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Later, Doomers.
Welcome back. Those were some bones, weren't they? And here's the 60s, the swinging 60s. And did they do more Cottingley Fairies in the 60s?
They did not,
Oh, okay.
but there was a reporter from the Daily Express newspaper who hey, remember those fairies was it be 40 years ago by this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, hey, remember those fairies? What was that all about? Let's find that out. And so they track down Elsie, who both Elsie and Frances eventually left England and lived abroad. I think Frances went back to South Africa for a bit, but then by this point they're both living in England again. And so Elsie gets traced.
Are they in their 60s? 50s?
Let's see.
Well, it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, suffice it to say they're okay.
So
50s.
at this point, over the intervening years, people had occasionally brought it up, and every time they insisted these were not fakes. They said, we did
Right.
not fake this. This really happened. We really saw these fairies. By 1916, though, the story kind of starts to change a bit. Elsie says now that maybe the fairies had been figments of her imagination. But then
how did they get photos?
because then it said, well, maybe they actually were psychically imprinting these images on the film. Now, this is a thing that has come up before.
Yeah.
I think Harry Price investigated some of this too,
Right.
where people say, I can influence the glass plates by projecting my thoughts onto them and capturing these images. So
Right.
she says, well, maybe it was more that we just believed so much in the fairies that we manifested the fairies on the film.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, the photograph. I think this is called. I remember
It's
our
interesting
ghost
that that's
photographs.
yeah.
We talked about photography. This is the
Photography,
This
yeah.
is photography.
Is that supposed to be more believable than that it was just fairies?
I don't know.
Maybe she just
Yeah.
that's what she supposes it was now.
And now, from this point on, though, that it becomes TV shows start coming to interview them. So, in 1971, they're interviewed for TV. But again, Elsie sticks to the story that she's like, no, they are photographs of figments of our imagination. And that's what I'm sticking to. But we didn't fake it.
All right.
Yeah.
I admire their consistency.
So, yeah, they keep saying, we didn't do this. We didn't do it. It's real, blah, 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 blah. But then the story changes yet again in 1983. At this point, yeah, they are old women in their 80s.
Okay.
And at this point, finally, they I think Elsie's like, yeah, it was all fake.
But only one of them said that.
Yes.
Okay.
They were all fake. And then when confronted, Frances is like, yeah, they were fake, except for that last one. The last one, where they're kind of transparent, that one's still real. That one was her thoughts being projected.
I'm kind of bummed out that they're actually suddenly saying they're fake now. It's kind of like
they could have died. And
Paul McCartney spent a decade saying, oh no, Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds isn't about LSD. And then recently he's like, yeah, it was about LSD. It's like,
Or
oh,
like-
come on.
I think it'd be more like Paul saying, hey, guess what? I have been dead this whole time.
Yeah, well, that would be amazing.
I'm not Paul. Paul is dead. Miss him.
I'm a Canadian firefighter who won a lookalike contest in 1968.
So they finally admit for the magazine Unexplained that it's all fake. And here's how they did it. And Arthur Conan Doyle should have caught on quicker. because they drew these fairies themselves. Well, or at least Elsie did. Remember I said she had artistic talent.
Right.
Her dad was like 100% right.
Yeah.
She drew these
Yeah,
fairies.
her dad like knew immediately what was going on.
And the fairies, specifically, she was inspired by a picture that came from a 1914 book called The Princess Mary's Gift Book.
Now, you found the PDF of this and sent it to me,
Yeah.
and I looked through it, and I couldn't find fairies anywhere, and then you had to point out, oh, it was just inspired. And actually, the drawings she did were quite a bit different, which, for one thing, she added wings.
Well, basically, yeah. So she found existing pictures. It's illustrations. So the book was a collection. It was an anthology of short stories that were illustrated.
Yeah.
Arthur Conan Doyle had 2 stories in that book.
Yeah, I saw that, and that was confusing because I was like, wait, which one was the Strand? That's a different thing. He just happened to also be in that book. That's funny.
Yeah, the book. So they went through this book. They found images of these girls dancing in flowing clothing.
Mm-hmm.
They then drew those from looking at it, translated it, added wings, cut them out, and then using hat pins, stuck them into the moss and then staged the photograph.
And the drawings look, you can tell they're drawings, but they're pretty well rendered. Like they look pretty darn realistic. In fact, they look more realistic than the drawings she was modeling them after, because the drawings she was drawing from were like Art Nouveau line art, like Munch or something. And she like shaded it and, put in all the stuff to make it look more photoreal. And then it's pretty darn good. I mean,
now at one point Elsie's father Arthur had searched their rooms looking for the fairies, and they weren't in there. And it's because after they were done with each photo shoot, they tore them up.
Wow.
Threw the cardboard that they were illustrated onto into the beck, where it got soggy and floated away. They literally
destroy all the evidence.
Flushed the evidence away. Yeah.
That would have been my downfall if I had tried this. I would have totally saved those. And then I would have been found
And then I
out.
would have mass produced them and sold them.
Yeah.
To the online store.
Yeah, right.
But there is still a disagreement, like I said. Francis still insists that last one was real.
Right.
Now, what I'm going to read you is it's from February 17th, 1983. This is the confession letter. This is Elsie's, this is the page of Elsie's confession letter that she wrote to a journalist who was going to start. This is where she finally explains everything. Dear Mr. Crawford, thank you for your letter revealing so much depth and understanding of the pickle Francis and I got ourselves into on that day back in 1916. She says 1916, but everything else is 17. But I don't know, maybe she's, when you get really old and you're in your 80s.
Hey, ask me what year we started this podcast.
Yeah, ask you anything about this podcast. Sorry. Okay, so that day back in 1916, when our practical joke fell flat on its face, when no one would believe we had got pictures of real fairies. Like, they didn't think anybody would believe it. They're like, so, we just thought it was so ridiculous. Anyway, so just imagine if they had. The joke would have ended there and then when we would have told all. When I was 15 years old and Francis was 9 years old. But instead, the laugh was on us, all laughingly asking how it was done, and both feeling rather silly. We let out the joke. We let our joke. Sorry, it's in cursive. So.
Yeah, that's all right.
You're
literally reading the actual letter.
I am reading the actual letter. Yes, this is not transcribed. This is the actual letter. So we let our joke lie flat on its face till some years later when Conan Doyle came into it. My dad said, really, you must tell right now how you got these photos. So I took Frances aside for serious talk, as the joke had been my own invention. But she begged me not to tell, as the Strand magazine had brought her so much teasing at school, and I was also feeling sad for Conan Doyle. We had read in the newspapers of his getting some jamming, apparently.
Okay, that was
jarring. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm so used to our modern media. Like, they blasted him.
Yeah, he was on blast. Conan Doyle was on blast.
He's getting some jarring comments. First about his interest in spiritualism, and now laughter about his belief in our fairies. There was also a cruel cartoon of him in a newspaper, chained to a chair with his head in a cloud, and Sherlock Holmes stood beside him. he had recently lost his son in the war, and the poor man was probably trying to comfort himself with unworldly things.
Oh my gosh, that's
so they do a
sweet.
practical.
They wanted to keep it because
they did a practical joke because they weren't getting any financial benefit.
No,
from it.
no,
So they
it
do
was
a practical
just,
joke.
Yeah.
The article appears in the Strand, and it's basically the whole thing is like, one, they're like, well, if we admit that it was fake,
they didn't want to make Arthur Conan Doyle look like a fool.
Yeah, they felt bad at that point. She's like, oh,
man.
It was a joke.
It
got
went
in over its
too
head.
far.
It went too far, and at a certain point, it's like you just can't admit it.
Yeah.
But then I guess getting older, she was like, okay, the time has finally come to like reveal all. She included, to prove that she had done so, she drew a picture of a new fairy that she included with that picture. Like 60 years later. She drew it.
You showed me that. That was
And
good.
it is really, it's good. It's a good
well,
art.
and
It's
it's
better than I could draw.
Yeah, and it's in color,
It's
even
in
though
color.
you would do it in black and white. It makes me wonder if she drew those fairies in color. I don't know.
So she and Francis, though, still never understood why so many people were willing to believe in these fairies like so readily.
Yeah.
And up till they both died, they still disagreed about that last picture. Elsie was like, it's fake. Francis maintained until she died that was a genuine picture.
It seems there have been other instances, like stories we've covered in this podcast, where people admit, all right, it was fake, except for this part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
just want to keep a little bit.
Yeah, keep the magic alive.
Keep a little bit there. Yeah.
So now we're going to just briefly talk about the present outcomes of this. So that was in 1983 when she revealed that it was a hoax. Here's how we did it and everything. To this day, the Cottingley fairies will still show up in YouTube videos and other podcasts where they present it as if it is still an unsolved mystery or that it is real.
There you go. It's one of those things. Again, we've covered other topics where once it attains a certain amount of recognition, people throw any evidence against it out the window, even if it's proven false.
I have listened to other paranormal podcasts that have covered this topic, and they never bring up that it was revealed as a hoax. They just end it like, and it's what do you think? Proof of fairies? And it's like, no. Even if you didn't, even knowing it's not a hoax directly, no, it's still not proof of fairies. So
the fairies bought them off in later years is what happened.
Big fairy.
Big fairy swooped in and paid everybody off.
So I guess, it's a cautionary tale about because now with the internet and with AI,
oh gosh,
this is going to get out of hand. Like if it was that easy in 1917 for two young girls to fool, some of the leading minds of the time with cardboard.
It's impossible. Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
And, it's like, okay, well now, I recently saw, this is very depressing, saw somebody had an argument online where they showed the classic picture from the 1800s of all the buffalo skulls. You know this picture?
Buffalo skulls?
It's in the Ken Burns documentary on the West. It's
yes.
It was in our history books growing up.
Yes.
About the American bison, and there's a big pile
I remember this,
of their bones. There are people now who are claiming that picture is AI and it's fake because there's no way you could pile up bones like that. And then when somebody pointed out, no, this picture has been around forever. I was learning about this when I was a kid. The rebuttal was, well, I've never seen it before.
Therefore.
And with AI, I can't trust it. So now, your eyes literally cannot be trusted.
That's the other side of the AI coin is not only are people going to be fooled by fake images, they will think real images might be AI and not believe them.
Yeah, at this point,
it
we
goes
have
the other direction, too.
We have permanently fucked up future historians' jobs.
Yeah.
There is no way that, because of how outlandish and ridiculous shit is right now for us in our world, there's no way somebody a few hundred years from now is going to look at these records
try
and
sussing it out.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think the 2020s will just be a no-go zone for historians. A lot of stuff happened.
It's a new Dark Ages. It'll be a new Dark Ages where it's that history is just anyway.
Well, on that note, let's move on to Garth's Corner.
Yeah, Garth's Corner.
So this is a different kind of a corner than we normally do. This is actually a video corner. If you want to watch Garth's Corner, it's on our YouTube.
Yeah, we'll play the theme song here.
Yeah, we'll play the song, but the song has an accompanied music video where you get to see Cody and I recreate the whole thing. We do it from scratch more or less, and
in only a very slightly updated way as to how they did it.
Yeah. We tried to do it in a similar way with some modern tools, but
with very similar results.
Yeah, with very similar results. So go ahead and go to our YouTube channel and check that out. Just go on YouTube, search for Least Haunted. You'll find a bunch of stuff that isn't us, but if you scroll down a little bit, eventually you'll find the little ghosts.
Yeah,
our little logo, and then you'll see that. So yeah, go ahead and check it out. And
here's the song.
I wrote this song cause I've got something to say here. It's the Devil's Haircut parody, I'll tell you why later. How can we fool the author of Sherlock Holmes with photographic evidence of fairies and gnomes? These fairies are held up with hat pins and trees. It's an in-camera effect, so just point and shoot please. Arthur Conan Doyle starts talking some mock him. Theosophists are all popping and locking. Got a fairy photo, it's been signed. Here's evidence we can get behind. Seeing is believing if you don't mind. I got a fairy photo, are you blind? Come on down to the guild and see them. There's a word at the bottom with a special meaning. They don't call it a crick or a creek or a stream, man. They call it a beck here in North England.
And there it is. So, yeah, that was the song. And if you want to, the song's fine, but really to feel the full effect, you got to see it.
You got
Seeing is believing,
in this
Cody.
case, yes.
So, yeah, that's been Garth's Corner. And
yeah,
I think that's about all we have to say about the Cottingley Fairies.
Yeah, a real short episode. You are on your way out of town, are you not?
I am, yes. Got a lot of packing to do. We're going to Arches. Looking forward to it.
So by the time people hear this, you will be somewhere out in the desert.
Yep, I'll be out in the desert. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
So, short episode this week, but we still are going to take all the time necessary to thank our Monster Squadron Patreon producers. They keep the lights on.
Thank you. Oh, let's name them.
Yes. They need this. They pay for it.
Name them, Cody. Name them.
Our little fairies this week are Travis Alexander, The Bi Barbarian, Rachel Krieger, Tom Dahl, Justin Duckham, Kelly Flynn, Gunnar Franks, Carla Harrington, Havelock, New Jared, Ken, Brian Lamb, TJ Levenhagen, Alicia Overton, Jordan Ramey, a different one but the same one, Blue Roan, and Tatum.
Thank you, one, and thank you all. And thank you all, as I turn to camera. Thank you all for joining us.
Tuning in this time.
Yeah.
I don't know what our next episode's going to be. We're going to...
we'll figure it out.
But until then... Until that next time, go support us on Patreon. Follow us on. I might revive the Blue Sky and the Tumblr.
There you go.
Got to get that going.
We'll post pictures of all of these fairy things on there.
You can also join the Discord. Link below. You can send us mail. P.O. Box 22, Red River Estates, California 95044. And hopefully in the not too distant future, within maybe weeks of this coming out, our show will be premiering on YouTube. Our Sequoidea road trip show.
Yes, we the first episode's nearly done, and the rest are underway. So hopefully you'll be seeing that soon.
There's a trailer up for it on the Sequoidea YouTube
Not
channel.
on the YouTube. We'll put links to both.
Yeah.
So not to confuse anybody.
And okay. Well, until next time, then.
The only thing not getting photographed by a river.
Some big piece of machinery drives down the road.
Getting photographed down by the river. The back.
Living in a van down by the beck. So until next time, the only thing that's haunted
is you.
Woo!
The joke is only funny if the whole world is laughing at you.
Say goodbye.
I'd never even thought of it being a fraud. It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun. And I can't understand it to this day why people were taken in. They wanted to be taken in. But people often say to me, don't you feel ashamed that you've made all these poor people look fools? They believed in you. But I don't, because they wanted to believe. Look at this photograph. That fairy's all out of drawing. That leg doesn't belong to that fairy. And somebody pointed it out in the newspaper. And one of our dear believers said, well, fairies aren't like humans. They haven't got bodies like we have, or the skeleton, and arms and legs. They sort of put it together with thought. And sometimes it doesn't come out right.
The Least Haunted podcast is recorded before a dead studio audience and is a presentation of Sequoidea Productions, LLC.